So our guest again today for the Horn Notes video podcast is Gabe Kovach. Welcome.
Thank you for having me back.
So Gabe has been principal horn of the Phoenix Symphony since 2006. And in the previous episode, we talked about his development of a triple horn with Patterson Hornworks. And in conjunction with that, he also was working on mouthpiece designs with Hauser, and he has his own mouthpiece model available now through Hauser. So I'm going to kind of talk about mouthpieces a bit too, because it's obviously mouthpiece is part of the whole package of any horn design.
Yeah, they're sort of integral. The mouthpiece came after, and it was born out of sort of the same issues with now that you have a triple horn and you have this new instrument. I always felt like it was reverse engineering in a way of using this staple mouthpiece that we have on now a new instrument. And in my mind, I use my triple all the time, and I'm not bashful about it. It is my only instrument that I use. I used to be in the mindset of, well, I'll play on my double, practice on my double, perform on my triple, and I was just like, this is backwards. This is the instrument that I want to play on. I feel as comfortable on the B-flat F side to practice on that horn as well with the triple, and use it as a fully chromatic instrument. So why should my mouthpiece now not feel as comfortable as my instrument does and have that come in line? And I always felt that I was using this big mouthpiece on an instrument that wasn't set up for it, because as we talked previously, we have different tapers now. So let us find a mouthpiece that matches to that.
Yeah, so this is there's like a good sort of like topic I've mentioned to people before. I think it's kind of important to think about. So I know that, for example, you can buy mouthpieces that are marketed for years and years. So Miraphone had one years ago that was marketed as a descant mouthpiece. You could buy descant mouthpieces, and you get to thinking about it. A lot of the older school mouthpieces were basically set up more or less for an F horn, if you get down to it. And then it can be a little more optimized toward a B-flat horn. And then you can get something even smaller that's a little more optimized to a high F side of an instrument. Now, of course, the triple horn, you've got all those sides, so there's a lot to balance and stuff. But just on a basic level, I think you've got to think like, you get a new horn that's a pretty different horn, you're probably going to have to think about another mouthpiece to really get that horn to hit its optimal place as a playing, as a tool.
Well, I feel really fortunate that growing up in Philadelphia, the city itself, but that there was a mouthpiece maker in my back door in Dave Hauser, and then moving to Phoenix, there's a mouthpiece maker in my back door here at Tom Greer. So when I had issues with mouthpieces or teeth moving or just moving through phases of life, trying to figure out what works. So I feel very fortunate. Not everybody does have a mouthpiece maker in their backyard where they live, but I was fortunate to have that. But my relationship with Dave Hauser goes all the way back to when I was in high school, so we're talking 20 plus years.
Wow. See, I hadn't even heard of Hauser mouthpieces before a couple of years ago, get down to it. So this is, I've been living under a rock, I guess, here, but things are kind of regional to a point.
Absolutely. Well, when I got into Curtis, Bloom gave me 5 mouthpieces that I didn't know anything about to play on, to choose from, and I chose this one. It felt great, and in my novice mind, I had no idea about mouthpieces, and I had no idea what I had chosen. And what I had chosen happened to be a Vienna mouthpiece, and I often wondered why the stem was so long and why it was so deep and why it stuck out of my horn so long, but it felt great and comfortable to play on, so that's what I did. I just didn't know any better. But then as my schooling went on and my education went on, and I started to wonder why it was so hard to play up high, and you start to paint your picture for yourself on what you want to play on.
Yeah, well, here's like another random question. So myself, I mean, how many different mouthpieces do you think you've played on at this point?
Hundreds. And how many do I own? I probably own about 60.
So, they have a group on Facebook called the Mouthpiece Junkies or something. No, I'm kidding. But actually, I'm identical. I've played on like the similar number of mouthpieces and own that similar number of mouthpieces. So maybe we need an intervention. I don't know.
I think we do because, well, I mean, it's interesting that you mentioned that, because now I view mouthpieces much like a double reed player looks at reeds. They make reeds specific to a piece that they're playing, and they'll shape the tip differently. They'll add depth or take away part of the material so that that reed is comfortable for that week, and it's a constantly new thing. So why am I playing on a mouthpiece that's an average mouthpiece and sort of good here, sort of good there, and we make the best of it? Why am I limited to my choices when I have repertoire that's facing me that's particularly high or particularly low, why shouldn't I change mouthpieces? Why shouldn't I change rims? Why should I not be as comfortable with these tools that are in front of me if I am secure with what I have and what I'm doing with it and an express purpose for it? I should have the ability to go back and forth and vacillate. And, it doesn't feel great on the face at first to do that, but I think it's actually a learned experience, one, that you can play on anything that's in front of you if you dedicate your time to knowing it. And then once you know it, have the ability to transfer back and forth between it.
Yeah, no, and I know myself, I've switched between horns a fair amount as well, and I've owned multiple horns, and you get to a point where you know that each of these different horns plays better on different mouthpieces. They're not all going to play as well on any certain mouthpiece. And then it's a challenge, too, for horn makers as well, because they have to make their instrument so that it will play well on some kind of generic but good mouthpiece for most anybody. But still, you can fine-tune it and play better. So your mouthpiece, so I'm looking at so you go to Hauser's, and you can download a PDF that talks about this. So it's developed this is the Kovak model. It says it's a medium cup. Whatever medium is. It's all kind of... Well, now this relates to another thing. So when I was a doctoral student, I did a project where I measured horns and mouthpieces and wrote like a 50-page paper. I could dig it out. It's up there someplace. And I had to come up with, like, well, what is medium? And I had a system I was using to measure. And if he says medium, it's medium within his system, but what medium means to... nobody wants small. Nobody wants, it's kind of an interesting thing. But size-wise, it must be similar to others.
Well, it's funny, if we go back to your introduction, you had mentioned the idea of desk amp mouthpieces. So here's the pitch that I emailed Dave Hauser about. I said, in the lexicon of mouthpieces that you have, I see that you don't have a desk amp. And so I've I pitched the idea of the triple horn to Patterson, who designed it, and I was his test model for it, and we went back and forth. And now I feel like I need a mouthpiece. And what I see that's missing in your stable of mouthpieces is a desk amp mouthpiece. So truly, the idea was to go with a desk amp mouthpiece, and that was the genesis behind it. But then as the project gained legs and the development of it continued, we were leery of the idea of labeling it something where if player X came off the street and wanted to try a mouthpiece, he would say, no, I don't want to try the desk amp mouthpiece because it's going to pigeonhole me to only play high. And what we noticed about it was how wide a facility that it had throughout the registers of the horn, regardless of it being on a triple horn or regardless of it being on a double horn. It just felt like a good mouthpiece. And so we scratched the idea of labeling it and putting it in a box that would pigeonhole it to be something where initially the setup was for it to be a desk amp mouthpiece, but it didn't play like one, so we scratched that idea.
Yeah, so I'm looking through his published stuff. I mean, basically he goes from medium to medium deep to deep. Like all the mouthpieces are in that range. And I know, like myself, as I see those words, I know the only ones I'm going to like are the ones marked medium, probably. Just personally.
Right.
At this point, although back in the day, like you go back to whatever you were playing back in the day, I was playing, old school Giardinelli mouthpieces for a long time, and they would probably all be deep.
Well, this is considered. It was based upon this old European mouthpiece that I had that I really liked playing on, but there were some limitations that I found in it, and so I guess in terms of your first question on what is medium, the next question is, well, what is the bore size? So this one is actually a 16 bore, but some people would have this idea that 16 is narrow and tight. But I think all of this is a balancing act between what it's coming in from and where it's coming out of.
Oh yeah, exactly. And I've gone through the. So for anybody listening that doesn't know what a 16 is, so that has to do with the numbered drill size. It's related to wire gauge. A 16 is a smaller one relative to a 10, which is bigger than that. And I like a size around 16 a lot right now, but if you'd asked me when I was a student, would you play a 16? I'd be like, no, that's like way too small. So trends have kind of changed. I think, though, this type of setup definitely works better for just real playing. today.
And so where our focus in this one became was the 16 and the cup were balanced behind a backboard that really allowed for the air to come out of the mouthpiece in a really efficient way so that you weren't compromised or a player doesn't feel compromised to the low side of things. And maybe it facilitated the high register to a greater extent, but now that we're applying this to a triple horn, we really felt comfortable in the idea that this is an everyday mouthpiece. This is a mouthpiece that, regardless of my wants and wishes as a player, and yes, I gravitate to it, is a mouthpiece that everybody can find some level of comfort with, that it doesn't push you to an extreme where you feel that it can only be used as such.
Right. Yeah, no, and so the process is great. Now, if you're going to say, so it's available, is it available only as a 3-piece design?
I think it's easier done as a 3-piece, but I'm sure that if you called Dave or ordered through Dave and wanted a 1-piece mouthpiece, that there would be no trouble with it. The flexibility that we wanted in making it as a 3-piece is because there's 4 progressive depths of backbores that you go through all the different throat sizes so that you can find A, B, C, or D that you gravitate to, and that they all work well within the cup and they all work well within the 16 bore. And should you as a player decide that you would rather play on a 14 versus a 16, that you have that. But what we really set out to do was gain optimization of it, and then have a narrow version of spectrum that player can come in and tweak it a bit. But if it gets too far beyond those boundaries and moving it down to an 8 bore, then it really puts the whole mouthpiece out of balance. And that's something that we really wanted to avoid, is limiting the options, because once it gets into something else, it really is something else, and you can't distort it to a point where you really don't know where your base is anymore.
Mm-hmm. This is great. So it is available. So the other topic, the maybe final topic, but we could talk about this forever, I think. But the other one is that I think people think a lot about is stainless steel versus brass, which is like an interesting topic, because my observation is it kind of depends on the I've tried this last year both with a number of students, and some students sound better one way and some sound better the other, and there's no, I don't know. What's your thinking about stainless steel versus brass?
Before we get into allergies and alloys that people may have facial reactions to and how the skin reacts to it, I'm just old school that way. I like brass. I have a bunch of stainless steel, and they work well, but there's something about the feedback loop within brass where I feel a greater connective tissue with that I don't get with stainless. And I know that Dave Hauser makes all of his mouthpieces now primarily in stainless, but you can still get them in brass. And I think if you ordered them in brass, he would be happy to do that. I hope I'm not speaking out of turn with that one.
Or you could get them in plastic. I know you can get plastic rims. Well, going along those lines, I mean, I've been. It's very. I think anyone who is using the Hausers, it's definitely worth trying both, and try to get some good ears on it out there, and just kind of see what you feel. It's an interesting comparison, for sure. I've been playing on both. Right now, I'm playing. Today, I've changed mouthpieces a lot, but what I'm playing on is actually a Hauser mouthpiece, but it's marketed through Houghton. I'm playing the H1 in brass and liking it pretty well. And but I should try one of these Kovak mouthpieces apparently. So again, it's right at the back of his catalog, so it's kind of like hidden a little bit.
It's in his artist series.
How does this? If you were just going to make a broad generalization, how it compares to anything, so if somebody's thinking about mouthpieces, I mean, it's other than you like it, what does it compare? What does it compare? I mean, it's not like it's obviously not like an old school Giardinelli mouthpiece or something. I mean, what does it sort of compare to in your mind? Just going, I don't know, without being too brand specific, at least to other brands that are available now.
You know what? In my heart of hearts, what I feel that it reminds me of closest to anything else that I've played on throughout the years is actually the first mouthpiece that I ever played on. It reminds me of the body of the Contu. The rim of the Contu is massive, and it's a lot of metal on the face. But through the years, I actually had 2 Contu mouthpieces, and I took the rim off of one and took the body off the other. And it does feel more like the first thing that I played on for me. And I think that our body always remembers that point in time where things felt easy. And that's what it harkened back to for me. It was like, this feels right. This feels natural, and it feels easy for me. And the muscle memory, regardless of the probably the last time I played that Contu was 8th grade. I started the horn in 2nd grade. That's what my body remembered.
Wow, 2nd grade. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, I'm not admitting that I could do much at that point, but that's when I started.
I didn't even start horn until a freshman in high school. Played trumpet from 7th grade. So I was I often think, I mean, I was behind a lot of people when I got out of high school, but I caught up, okay? So.
we all meet at the same place eventually.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's cool. So this mouthpiece model, I mean, again, check out Hauser Mouthpieces. He's got a very, very good product. And Houghton has their version available through their website. There's I know Siegfried's Call has a version of some mouthpieces that they sell that are actually Hauser as well. If you want to try a few other options, he's making a lot of good mouthpieces. Quality control seems to be really high.
That's the thing, that when you go and you order whatever mouthpiece that you would want to play on through Hauser, his level of consistency and his level of craftsmanship is just, from mouthpiece to mouthpiece, so spot on that I just found that I can always reorder something and know that I'm getting the same product.
Yeah, and that's like super important to a busy professional like you. Because it's actually, I'll just mention as another just random side point at the end here in this longer than anticipated edition of the Horn Notes Video Podcast. But, if you like, we're very attached to our horns and mouthpieces. Like, if suddenly, like, my horn and mouthpiece disappeared, it's good to know you're playing a mouthpiece. You can actually buy one that's like an actual duplicate of it, rather than something that's like maybe kind of close, like, and you're kind of hoping, So that's like an important consideration on this topic. I'll just say that.
Yeah, it's
you
nice.
need more than one anyway.
Maybe not 60.
Maybe not 60, but yeah, and you got to keep another spare in your case in case you lose your mouthpiece or something. So anyway, well, thanks, Gabe Kovach, for coming in and talking about mouthpieces, because we all love mouthpieces, right?
We all love them.
And Coprash. That's another episode, though.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been a pleasure.
And tune in again for more editions of the Horn Notes Video Podcast.